So there was a deal we worked on together last year, went to market. You were the bidder that we decided to go with. And it's a good company in your backyard, California-based company. And we signed an LOI. We came to an agreement and got into the quality of earnings phase. That was complete. We were moving along. And then, we decided, hey, listen, this isn't going to be the deal for us. And we're going to, part ways here. But what I found to be interesting, where most buyers would not do this, is you said, Nick, we hate to pull out of this deal. We don't want to, no, we don't want to be here, but we're here. We're going to provide you with the quality of earnings. We hope you go and sell this company. We know there's a market for it. We have to pull out. I don't know if any other buyer would have provided with a quality of earnings, because you're talking $60,000, $70,000+ for that report that you spent. And we were able to use that report to actually go and find another buyer. So I found that to be something somewhat interesting, but also spoke highly of who ATI is and who you are as a person. And, obviously we're going to keep these deals getting in front of ATI, and we're going to continue to partner on some of these deals. So I just found that to be fascinating. And I'm just curious as to why that you did that.
So to clarify, a QFE for ATI, it's $150,000. So we did the work, we spent the money. We were going through ERP implementation. We were having issues integrating some of the business ahead of time. So this was not a decision that was taken lightly. It was actually for all of my department heads that there was unnecessary stress on. So I had to back out. It's the first time I've had to back out. Normally, 90% of the deals, they go through. 10%, if we don't buy it, it's typically their financials were wrong. They told us it's X and it's half of X. It's 30% of X. In this case, everything was right. The stars were aligned, and it was an us thing. I happen to know the owner. I happen to know you. At the end of the day, I feel like my job, both in ATI and serving the industry, is to help restorers. And so I paid for the money. I owned the data. Why wouldn't I want another fellow restorer? If I could help expedite a sell 3 months earlier, I'm the one that walked away. It wasn't like it would have been totally different if you were walking away. I never would have provided that to you, but I felt like that was on us to do the right thing. And that's us living by our ATI Cares principles. Starts off with right thing always. And I think that was the right thing to do. And I think if I were in that situation again, whether it was you, an independent person, to me, that's the right thing to do. And that's how we run the business.
Yeah. And I speak of that firsthand. I mean, because in 2023, I founded Pinnacle Exit Solutions in July, and I spent the first few months going around meeting different buyers, PE groups, and strategics. And we had 3 deals that were set to close in December, before December 31st. Same buyer. And I remember the day, vividly. December 17th, my wife and we were viewing Christmas lights in St. Augustine, Florida. I get a phone call 7, 8 o'clock at night. Nick, we're going to have to back out of all 3 of these deals. Now, mind you, we were going to close in less than 15 days on all of these deals. And basically, we had dissolved companies. We created new LLCs. We had incurred thousands of dollars in legal expenses, accounting expenses, et cetera. And, in the 11th hour, they pulled out for no rhyme or reason. We're just sorry. No quality of earnings given, no real explanation given. But that could have been detrimental to not only our business, but to these sellers who had gone through the process, right? They were at the finish line, and they have gone through the grueling task of overcoming everything and getting to the finish line, only for the rug to be pulled out from under them. And then, talking to a seller and saying, hey, stick with me. We're going to have to go through this process all over again, but I will find you another buyer. And we were able to do that for all 3. But, just the difference in the level of respect I have for you and for the other company that did it so very differently. It's just night and day. And, not that I shared that word with anybody. I don't have to tell that story. But if you do that a number of times in this industry, word will eventually get out. And it's you don't want to develop that reputation, especially if you're trying to grow the business, both organically and through an M&A process. retrading is one of the worst words we use in this industry. But pulling out in the 11th hour is a different story all in itself. Yeah. So yesterday we were talking about growth, and I found it interesting because one of the things that, business owners and I talk about is potentially expanding right into different locations. But you had a counter thought to that. I want to give a scenario, and I want your thoughts on what you feel about this, and maybe, I would be for that, or no, I still am in the camp of having, a centralized location and no need to expand. So company, one office location, 60 miles apart, we're referring out $2-3 million a year for the last 3 years in referral work for mitigation rebuild. My thought would be, hey, let's start an office there because we're already referring out 2 to 3. We may not recapture the 3, but at least we're going to start that office and have a $2 million gain, usually right out of the gate. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. Yeah, it's close enough in proximity. You already know the client base there. You already generate. Those are the easy. Those everyone should do all day long. Anytime you're getting work in another city, whether you're sending people out, even if it's to another state on a regular basis, and you've already got a built-in book of business, 100% they should expand.
Got it. Yeah, and so also on top of the growth cycle and ideas of growing the business, how many of the companies, because this is another thing that when I bring on a client, sales and marketing plans are generally, hey, we have a BD guy that just really goes and chases down, commercial work, and we really don't know what he does, but we brought in $1 million last year. How many of the companies that you acquired actually had a sales and marketing plan? Just a ballpark, percentage.
Very few. Yeah, probably less than 25%.
Yeah, and I think when you acquire those companies, obviously you're mandating, hey, let's put together a sales and marketing plan. And I just wonder if the other 75% that didn't have a plan in place, how much revenue they were just leaving on the that they could have put on their books had they have had that proper sales and marketing plan. And it's so easy to do. It doesn't take a lot of work. There's not much thought that goes into it. It's customer based referral targets. Who's going to target what customers? Who's going to target what referral sources? How are we going to get in the door? It doesn't seem very difficult to put together. I'm just amazed at how few do it.
I would say most of the business we bought don't even have anyone in sales or business development.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then one thing I did want to touch base on was one advice I'd give to owner. I don't know if your perspective's different. So if I'm an individual restoration owner running a $10 million business, whatever it happens to be, the typical MO is I'm the owner. If I need to bring in if I have a CFO, which I may not, maybe a CPA, most people don't want to bring in employees. And my family did the same thing when we went to market. We signed an LOI. Our CFO had no idea. Right. Our chief legal counsel, we were big enough, had no idea. So we did it in a vacuum. Eventually we looped in the CFO, of course. But if I could give myself advice from 5 years ago, I would have looped in probably all of my trusted leaders on the top. Whether we do this or not, I want to give them reasons to help me get to the finish line. And I also have to run the business. And I also want you to continue to run the business as if you're not going to close a business, but sharing with your employees the why and hearing from and having them go through the process with you, you're going to be so much stronger and better and more prepared. And ultimately, the value might also exponentially increase. If I'm meeting with a $10 million owner and I fly out to his facility and you're representing them and there's 5 key employees there, he's getting more money. Mm-hmm. Just because the fact that he's brought in the team versus if it's the one person, like how, and if I don't get to meet the team until 10 days before I close, I can't factor the team. But I would tell anyone to bring in your team. It's not scary. Mm-hmm. People sell things all the time. We sell homes, we sell cars. You're not going to keep your business forever. We're all going to die at some point. You're giving it to your kids. You're still selling it to someone or gifting you. So the sooner you can bring in the team, you're actually better served.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. We're not going to make an announcement to everybody that works for the company. There's no need to tell your techs and your bottom level employees that, hey, we're going to sell this business in 100 days or 200 days or whatever the case may be. The simple reality is if you make that announcement prematurely and that deal doesn't close, then you risk them, having this information and being confused. But I always ask a seller, I said, hey, I'm going to need your CFO, your controller, whoever handles HR in the fold up front, right? Because you're not going to know the answers to these diligence phases in most cases. We're also going to need that key management in place because I need them to buy into the idea that we're about to sell this company. And are you or are you not going to stay on? Because if they stay on, that could be a critical piece to the business, right? If somebody's responsible for a $3 or $4 million book of business and they're like, hey, this is a family business and we don't want to work for anyone else, we're going to go elsewhere. Well, it's going to decrease the value of the company. So we need each of your top level employees, key management, to really buy into that deal as well. And then we try to structure in some incentives to keep those guys bought in. So whether that's through their employment agreements or offer letters, but we want everybody bought in and we want everybody under the fold working together throughout the process. It, like you said, it offers so much more value to both buyer and seller, no doubt. And I found it interesting that you were talking about a deal that you gave a lighter multiple because he didn't bring his GMs. And you found, out, who his GM was, and you were like, we would absolutely pay that. Yesterday, through the conference, I found that topic to be interesting as well.
Yeah, and so I looked at a deal with you last year. We ended up not getting it, but again, a good example. I believe we did obviously meet and greets. There was 5 or 6 people at dinner, everyone from ops leaders to sales. And so I would say, depending on the size of your business, you're a really small business. That may just be you as the owner and one person. If you're a $20 million business, again, depending on how many employees it's definitely not any more than 5. I would say it's between 1 and 5, depending on how many employees you have.
Right. You're absolutely right. This is less than a half a dozen in most cases. But I leave that to the discretion of the seller. I obviously give advice of, hey, this is going to add value. This is going to expedite the process. This is what I would do. This is what I would not do. But if they're dead set on telling every employee, hey, we're selling the business, there's nothing I can do. That's their prerogative. But there's some things that I have just seen, pitfalls occur, due to a premature speech of, hey, we're selling the business. And it's embarrassing for a seller to retract those words. Not only that, if we're going from a speech of saying, hey, we've partnered with this great buyer, and then now we're going to, hey, we partnered with another great buyer. It's like, well, how many great buyers are there, right? So I think that's where it can become dangerous, but certainly to your point, having the top tier in that fold for sure. Yeah. The other thing I found interesting yesterday, talking through the slides is, the retrade. It was one of the questions of, hey, what is a retrade? These newer PE groups coming out of the gate, we talked about this earlier, they're aggressive, right? And they're looking at an LOI they're looking at financials for 3-4 days, asking a few questions, maybe a Zoom, maybe a Teams meeting with the seller, spitting out a value, right? Like, hey, this is, the value for your company. Here's the LOI. And these sellers going about it on their own, they get excited, right? And they're like, wow, this is a quick process. Here's $20 million. More times than not, that deal is going to get retraded. There's just not enough education from the buyer that's going in and really reviewing, taking a deep dive into the financials, the referral sources, the true, nuts and bolts of that business. On average, how long do you take to look at a company? And if they're doing this on their own, hey, Jeff, we want to submit internal financials to you, some job data, referral source. How long are you looking at that? Because you're not retrading, you're not backing away from deals. The deals you do LOIs with, in 90% of the time, you're closing that status.
I would say it depends on the business. It depends on how much data it is, but it could be as little as 2 weeks. I say more often than not, it's 4, 5, 6 months because it's just getting clean data, getting the information. It's really a cog in the wheel of the owner and their ability to get the information. Getting the financial data is the easy part, but then all of the subsequent answers to, why did mitigation go down? I don't know. Right. Why did your top customer go from this to this? Why was your biggest job X and now it's half of X this year? Like a lot of these questions they have, and they have to go back and think, and then they're running the business. So I would say more times than not, it takes much longer than we expect, and I think the owner expects.
Yeah. And I find it interesting in most cases when you will start out these conversations with, seller. Tell me how much of your service mix is coming from, mitigation or rebuilds, and 60% mitigation, 40% rebuild. And then when you start to really dig into the numbers, you find that percentage is so far off, it can be further from the truth. So that can really devalue a deal. But if that's what's being told to a buyer, then, it's just so many factors that come into play. And if that information is just inaccurate, I mean, these are why these deals are derailing, retrading and so on. And I just find it interesting at how many buyers nowadays are just right out of the gate so fast to pitch out an LOI, in hopes that everything sticks. And in most cases it does. It just does not. Yeah, it does not.